Hello everyone, welcome to Weathersfield Proctor Library Storytime. I'm Glenna Coleman, Youth Services Librarian, and I'm helped out here by our library bear, Bear. You may notice that he has on a special necklace today. This is a necklace made from a traditional bone fish hook from the country of New Zealand. Now, the people of New Zealand, the original settlers, were Polynesians whose name for themselves are the Maori. And our two stories tonight come from the Maori tradition. So I'll be reading to you from a book called Land of the Long White Cloud, Maori Myths, Tales, and Legends. These are stories that are retold by Kiri Te Kanawa, and they're illustrated by Michael Foreman. Now, Kiri Te Kanawa was born in New Zealand. Her father was Maori and her mother was Irish. And so she grew up hearing these stories and she has retold them for us. So this first story, well, both stories involve a character named Maui. And I'm going to continue to show you the cover of the book until we get to the illustration in the first story. The first story is called Maui and the Great Fish. And that's why our library bear has on his fish hook. So Maui and the Great Fish. This is the story of how Maui caught the great fish of New Zealand. The Maori name for the North Island is still Te Ikia Maui, meaning the fish hook of Maui. In other words, Maui used the North Island as his fish hook to catch the South Island, his great fish. Maui was, they say, half man and half god. He knew many magic spells and had many magic powers that his older brothers didn't know about, or if they did, they pretended to ignore. One day, when he heard his brothers talking about going fishing, Maui decided that he wanted to go too. So before his brothers had woken up, he went down to where the canoe was, carrying his special fishing hook. Hearing his brothers approach, he quickly hid under the floorboards of the boat. The brothers arrived, and they were laughing about having managed to escape without Maui. They were looking forward to having a good day's fishing without being bothered by their young brother. They pushed out from shore and were still laughing when suddenly they heard a noise. "What was that?" asked one of them. Then they thought they heard someone talking. They couldn't see anyone. They couldn't see anything except for the water. "Oh, it must have been a seagull or something screeching in the distance," suggested another of the brothers. Then they heard the sound again. It was Maui, laughing and saying in a strange voice, "I am with you. You haven't tricked me at all." The brothers were becoming quite scared now. It sounded like muffled speech, but there was no one to be seen. On they paddled into the deep waters. Again they heard the voice, and this time one of the brothers said he thought the noise was coming from under the floorboards, so he wrenched up a few. There was Maui, laughing loudly and boasting, "I tricked you! I tricked you!" The brothers were amazed to see Maui there. They decided to turn back immediately. "You are not coming with us," they said. "You're far too young, and our father doesn't want you to come with us." But Maui said, "Look back! Look back to the land! Look how far away it is!" He had used his magic powers to make the land seem much farther away than it really was. The brothers, not realizing that it was a trick, reluctantly agreed to take Maui with them. They paddled on for a while and then stopped. Just as they were about to throw over the anchor and start their fishing, Maui said, "No, please don't do that, because I know a much better place further out, full of fish. All the fish you could want. Just a little while longer, and you'll have all your nets filled in half the time." The brothers were tempted by this promise of fish and paddled out a little further, when Maui stopped them and told them to start fishing. So they threw over their nets, which within a few minutes were overflowing. They couldn't believe their luck. Their boat was lying low in the water with the weight of their catch. So the brothers told Maui that they were going to turn back. But Maui said, "No, it's my turn. I haven't had a chance to do my fishing." "But we have enough," they replied. No, I want to do my fishing, insisted Maui. With that, he pulled out his special fishing hook made of bone. I'll let you look at the fish hook. And asked for some bait. The brothers refused to give him any, so Maui rubbed his nose so hard that it began to bleed. Then he smeared the hook with his own blood and threw it over the side. Suddenly, the boat was tossed about, and Maui was thrilled because he was sure he had caught a very big fish. He pulled and pulled. The sea was in turmoil, and Maui's brothers sat in stunned silence, marveling at Maui's magic strength. Maui heaved and tugged for what seemed like an age, until at last the fish broke the surface. Then Maui and his brothers could see that what he had caught was not a fish, but a piece of land, and that his hook was embedded in the doorway of the house of Tonganui, the son of the sea god. Here's a picture of the hook in the doorway and their canoe, their fishing canoe, being tossed about on the ocean. Maui's brothers couldn't believe their eyes. This beautiful land pulled up from the sea was smooth and bright, and there were houses on it and burning fires and birds singing. They had never seen anything so marvelous in their whole lives. Realizing what he had done, Maui said, "I must go and make my peace with the gods, because I think they are very angry with me. Stay here quietly and calmly until I return." As soon as Maui had gone, the brothers forgot his instructions and began to argue for possession of the land. "I want this piece," said one. "No, I claimed it first. It's mine," shouted another. Soon the brothers began to slash at the land with their weapons. This angered the gods even more, and its smooth surface was gashed and cut. It could never be smoothed out again. To this day, those cuts and bruises of long ago can be seen in the valleys and mountains of New Zealand. Well, I have one more story, but I'm going to show you the craft first. So you're going to be able to take home, it looks like a seashell, doesn't it? But really it's made out of paper, and it's shaped just like a scallop shell. Now you can make your own necklace. You can paint it and punch a hole in it and then hang it from a thread, and you can have your own necklace. Or you can make like an ornament out of it. Now you can paint it to look just like a real scallop shell. Now, this isn't a real scallop shell. This is a paper scallop shell that you can hang like that. Okay? So you can paint it bright colors. You can paint it to look like a regular scallop shell. You can do whatever you like, but you're going to be able to take home a scallop shell and made out of paper and a paintbrush. You can also use markers. I don't think crayons would work on this, but markers definitely would if you want to use markers. All right, on to our second story. Our second story about Maui is called Maui Tames the Sun. And this one has the illustration right here. That's a big sun, isn't it? All right, here we go. Let's make sure you can see this. Sorry about the jiggling. Maui had often heard his brothers talking about how there was not enough sunlight during the day. Night after night, they would sit round the fire and discuss this problem. No matter how early they got up, still there weren't enough hours of sunlight for all their village duties and for hunting and fishing. So Maui thought about what he could do to solve this problem. Then he announced to his brothers that he had found a solution. "I think I can tame the sun." "Maui, don't be so ridiculous," they replied. "No one can tame the sun. For a start, if you got anywhere near him, you would be burnt to a cinder. There is no way of taming the sun. He's far too big and powerful. But Maui said, with great authority this time, "Look, I can tame the sun. Get all the women of the tribe to go and cut as much flax as possible. I want a really huge pile. Then I will show you how to make a net that will be strong enough to capture the sun." I'm going to let you look at Library Bear now. "I will make sure that he won't go so quickly across the sky in future." The brothers obeyed him, and when they had collected mounds of flax, Maui showed them how to plait it into strong ropes. He made long ropes and short ropes and tied some of them together to make a net gigantic enough to catch and hold the sun. After many hours of plaiting, they finally had enough rope and nets to please Maui. Then he set off, equipped with his special axe, with his brothers and some men from the tribe, and it took several days to reach the sun's resting place in the east. After a short stop, they started their preparations. They found the cave from which the sun would be rising next morning, and they quickly set to work covering the entrance with the net of plaited ropes. When they were sure they had done a really good job, they camouflaged the ropes with leaves and branches. They also made themselves clay walls as a protection against the sun's fierce heat, and smeared the clay all over their bodies. Then they hid. Maui crouched down on one side of the cave, and the rest of the men were on the other side. It wasn't long before they saw the first glimmer of light from the cave. Then they felt the scorching heat. The men were shaking with fear as the light grew more and more blinding, and the heat more and more stifling. They were sure that Maui's plan would not work. Suddenly they heard a sharp shout from Maui. "Pull! Pull the ropes as hard as you can!" The net fell like a huge noose over the sun. Although the men were terrified that the sun would kill them all, they pulled and strained as hard as they possibly could so that the sun could not escape. The sun, who was raging at being held captive, struggled and roared. Maui knew he had to do something more than just hold the sun in the net, so he yelled to one of his brothers to take his end of the rope. He rushed out from the protection of his wall, and with his special axe raised high above his head, he ran towards the sun. Even though the heat was singeing his body and his hair, he started to attack the sun with his axe. The sun roared even louder. "What are you doing? Are you trying to kill me?" he screamed. "No, I'm not trying to kill you," answered Maui, "but you don't understand. You go too fast across the sky, and we are all unable to do our daily work. We need more hours of light in our days for hunting and fishing, for building and repairing our village houses." "Well," said the sun, "you have given me such a battering that I don't think I could speed across the sky now, even if I wanted to." "If we release you," said Maui, "will you promise to slow your journey down?" "You have so weakened me that now I can only go slowly," answered the sun. Maui made him solemnly promise to do what he had asked, and then he released the ropes. Maui's brothers and the men of the tribe watched as the sun, slowly and stiffly, began to lift into the sky. They all smiled at Maui. They were proud of him. To this day, the sun travels on his long, lonely path across the sky at a very slow pace, giving us many more hours of sunlight than he used to do. Let's take another look at that picture. You can see the men down below, all afraid of being scorched. Well, I hope you enjoyed those two stories about Maui. Maui and the Great Fish, and Maui Tames the Sun. These stories both came from the book Land of the Long White Cloud, Maori Myths, Tales, and Legends. These stories were retold by Kiri Te Kanawa, and they were illustrated by Michael Foreman. Goodbye till next time. This was Glenna Coleman at the Weathersfield Proctor Library with Storytime for our summer series, Imagine Your Story. And Library Bear also says bye to everybody, and we'll see you next time. Bye.